call to order the meeting of the October 2nd Frederick County Planning Commission. If you would, join me in a moment of silence, please. Thank you. We have an agenda tonight. If there's no changes to the agenda, I'll take a motion to adopt the agenda as it is.
So moved.
Second, is all those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Next item on our agenda is the approval of the minutes from our July 17th and our August 7th meetings from 2019. If there's no changes to the minutes as read, I'd have a motion to approve.
Move for approval of both sets of minutes.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. So moved. It's approved. Next item we have is zipping right through is our committee reports. Tonight, our first one will be transportation. Mr. Oates.
Yes, sir. We met this past Monday and just got an update on a lot of different projects in the county, but we did have one request for Route 653 McCubbin Road, asking we put it on the paving list. It's a short piece of road, only 4 or 5 houses on it, and the traffic counts looks like most of the traffic's coming out of West Virginia through there. We went ahead and approved their request to be added to the list next time we do the evaluation, but there was some concerns that it might turn out to be like Woodside Road or Woodbine up at Clearbrook, where after it was paved, the amount of traffic coming out of West Virginia, speed limit, or the speed went from about 30 miles an hour to 60.
Gee.
So the neighbors weren't too happy after it was paved, but we went ahead and moved it forward. And that's all I have.
All righty. Thank you, sir. Frederick Water, Mr. Unger.
Yes, sir. We met September 24th. Approved the capital budget transfer. The Frederick Water Board Directors approved a series of capital budget transfers to fund the capital construction projects that are underway. The transfer enables the project to proceed without requiring the supplement funding for the current budget year, yet the capital projects exceeded their budget amount while others was under budget. One of the things they had to do was approve the change order for Route 37 water main loop. They approved Garney Construction had to modify the booster for the water. They had some problems with it, so they had to do some work on that. And that's so that we could pump water from the Deal plant to the north without a problem. Now we got a complete loop around the county on that side. And the other thing is so we could fill that storage tank over right off of 37 if necessary. And we do have about 16,000 customers that are connected now for that. And the other thing for customer base overall is 16,409 connections. I know you'd like to hear that once in a while. Monthly water average was almost 8 million gallon per day, which is, I think, the highest I've ever seen it. In Stevens City, the Deal treatment plant north and south quarries continue to enjoy rechargeable and benefit the Frederick Water's efficiency source management. The quarries are still full, and are recharging very well. We pumped 3.1 million gallon per day out of the Deal plant, which is as much, that's about what we usually pump, around close to 3 million. Water purchased from the city was usually around 2 million gallon, and we purchased 1.4 million gallon, which is considerably less. That's a savings to the county every day. August rainfall was 2.75 inches, down from July of 5.73. That's all we have.
Thank you, sir. And if you would like, do you have a report for DIA?
I do.
RC? Okay.
Well, we talked about landscaping, buffer screening, off-street parking, and certain uses. And the other thing we talked about was telecommunication facilities, commercial, and we're going to be talking about that tonight. That's what we have on the agenda, so I'm going to leave that one be.
All righty. Thanks, sir. Historical resources, Mr. Molden.
Yes, the Historic Resource Advisory Board met on September 17th. There was just three things on the agenda: the election of chairman and vice chairman. The minutes were accepted from our August 18th meeting, and we reviewed a conditional use permit for an outdoor shooting range by Middletown Firearms. Mr. Travis Dotson had brought this to us, located at 6519 Valley Pike. The Historic Advisory Board was not in favor of this conditional use permit due to the proximity of the Vaucluse. That's all my report.
Thanks, sir. Thank you. And as we move right along, I see down at the end, we got our Winchester Planning Liaison, Mr. Tagnisi. Sir?
Good evening, Commissioners. Well, we had a very light session. We only had one item, public hearing. We approved rezoning .2 acres at the corner of East Fairfax Lane and National, which is the park. We rezoned .2 acres, 0.2 acres from HR1 to B1, and that will allow the builder to go from 44 to 47 units. That's all I was on our agenda.
All right. Thanks, sir. And the last of the reports, I'll fill in for Ms. Trout from our Board of Supervisors. Their report is as such. The Board of Supervisors met on Wednesday, September 25th. They approved a request from Frederick County Public Schools to schedule a public hearing to enter the bond sale for $3.2 million for the replacement of Ayler Middle School. I believe that was a supplemental. Approved an outdoor festival permit for Waveland Farm. 2 proposed ordinance amendments were moved to public hearing. Then she has a public utilities, including utility-scale solar power generator facilities and a conditional use in the RA district. And that was her report. So that ends our committee reports. Our next item is citizen comments. And I'll open it for citizen comments. Anybody that wants to come before us to speak to any matters that's not on the agenda? Don't all come at once, but seeing no one, we'll move on. Our next item on the agenda is Mr. Klein. We have information discussion items tonight. We have landscaping, buffers and screening, off-street parking, and requirements for certain uses. Mr. Klein.
Yes, good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the Planning Commission. This is an ordinance amendment discussion, and this is a proposed amendment to Chapter 165, the zoning ordinance, to clean up inconsistencies within certain sections in regards to certain requirements and to clarify or reduce requirements for certain uses. The zoning ordinance sections amended, which I'll go through in more detail, included storage facilities, self-storage, tractor truck and tractor trailer truck parking, special event facilities, off-street parking and parking lots, landscaping requirements, and buffer and screening requirements. And we'll go through each one of those changes. In regards to storage facilities, self-storage, the proposed changes correct landscaping and planting inconsistencies regarding plant size in this section with other sections of the zoning ordinance, and it also modifies requirements for the screening of the use. In regards to tractor truck and tractor trailer truck parking, the proposed changes prevent the siting of the above use adjacent to residential uses while enabling the location of these types of facilities where they are most appropriate, i.e. adjacent to major roadways and or in the vicinity of other business and industrial uses. It also provides a consistent hard surface standard, gravel, that is consistent with the temporary nature of the use. And this change also corrects inconsistencies with the section planting requirements with other sections of the zoning ordinance. In regards to special event facilities, the proposed changes provides clarity with certain practices in the county, specifically that the building official with the Department of Building Inspections is responsible for determining if a building or structure existing or to be constructed is agriculturally exempt from the Virginia Building Code requirements, or if the structure requires a separate building permit review. In regards to off-street parking and parking lots, the proposed changes correct inconsistencies with the required width of driveways serving parking lots in this section with other sections of the zoning and subdivision ordinance and with the county fire code. In regards to the landscaping requirements section, the proposed changes correct inconsistencies with plant size in this section with other sections of the zoning ordinance, and further clarifies requirements to prohibit plantings from being located within utility easements, and we've also eliminated certain plant species. And finally, in regards to our buffer and screening requirements, the proposed changes modify what activities are allowed in the inactive and active distance buffer. They modify the landscape screen planting requirements. It also amends the requirements for buffers where the land to be developed is adjacent to state road right-of-way with a designated functional classification of interstate, arterial, or collector roadway, and amends what zoning districts are allowed to request a reduced buffer distance if certain requirements are met. The Development Review and Regulations Committee discussed this item at their July 25th, August 22nd, and September 26th regular meetings, and the DRRC was generally supported the proposed changes. This item is presented to the Planning Commission this evening for discussion, and staff is seeking comments from the Planning Commission on the zoning ordinance text amendments to be forwarded to the Board of Supervisors. I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you, sir.
All right, thank you, Mr. Klein. Any questions of Mr. Klein? Anything that he has put before us? Okay. Thanks, sir. This is a discussion item, information and discussion items. Any discussion? Seeing, I got one there. Thanks, sir.
The only thing that, we've talked about this before, and the only thing that concerns me with the tractor truck parking using gravel surfaces is having that carried out on the road. If we had a rainy summer like we had last summer, and we had 6 inches of rain in 2 weeks, a gravel parking lot with tractor trailers on it would be pretty much a mess. If they turned, and there needs to be some way to enforce that they can't just carry the gravel out on the road and the mud out on the road. There's a lot of different ways to do that, but I don't know how we want to do it. I don't know if we want to have a section that's paved, if we want to have a section with the bump rails on that will knock it out of the treads, but just a little concerned about a gravel parking lot for tractor trailers if it gets real wet. And the same thing with the location of it. If it's located somewhere and all of a sudden there's a natural spring in the center of it and it becomes a muddy mess, what happens then? How do we enforce that?
In regards to the gravel, the one comment I could make would be that as part of the review of those, we typically require a site plan. They would have to meet a VDOT commercial entrance standard. And typically when gravel surface is being used as the hard surface, VDOT has an extension of pavement so that there is an adequate stopping distance is one concern, so that it's not with the gravel, and two, to ensure that the gravel isn't carried into the state right away. But I can certainly convey those comments.
Yeah, it doesn't always work, though. But just my concern there.
Thank you.
It makes sense, but it's just, how do we stop that and how do we enforce it?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? I guess the only thing I would say, we did discuss the nature of the word temporary. And did we ever, I know we got it in our notes here, did we ever land on what temporary actually is? The temporary, an infinite temporary? Temporary goes on for how long does temporary go for?
I don't believe the committee came to a consensus on the definition of temporary or had an adequate alternative. The comments were obviously provided in the memo, but we're certainly open to any comments from the Planning Commission regarding the use of that term or that statement in the memo, or in the text amendment, rather.
Since it's CUP, we could always say the CUP has a time limit, comes back for review. If it's no longer appropriate for those locations, it can be taken away. If you have a problem with the gravel and the mud, that's another reason. Make that a condition of the conditional use permit.
Yeah, but you know my feelings on conditional use permits.
This isn't building, it's just a flat area.
We never take it
Just a
away.
lot, yeah.
Well, if it's something that has to be renewed, it's not taken away, it has to be renewed.
The ability to renew conditional use permits?
If it's a condition.
I thought they were indefinite.
As we look to the right,
Perhaps one approach may be to remove these uses may be temporary statement from the section and let the conditional use permit stand by itself. I think, as you mentioned, the particular parking of tractor truck trailers and tractor trucks was indeed considered initially to be a temporary kind of use as industrial areas developed over time, perhaps more permanent buildings came online. But correct, it's very difficult to determine what that time is. The conditional use permit process does give you the ability to get into that if you wanted to, but it may be simpler in this case just to eliminate these uses may be temporary from the introduction to this section, because again, temporary is undefined.
thank you. Mr. Roddy, I think that's where I'd be leaning more toward, just removing that statement out of there and just have it under conditional use. Other than that, that's the only thing that I have an issue with. So the general consensus is we move this on, and with those slight changes, and it goes to the Board of Supervisors on October 9th. And before you rush to sit back down, you got the next item also, telecommunication facilities, commercial. Mr. Klein.
Yep. Thank you, sir. This is also an ordinance amendment for discussion this evening regarding telecommunication facilities commercial. The purpose of this proposed amendment to Chapter 165 of the zoning ordinance is to enable smaller commercial telecommunication facilities in certain zoning districts by right, and to codify changes that were imposed by the state code, creating a two-track process for the approval of these types of facilities, and to enable communication facilities by right in our office and manufacturing zoning district and our higher education zoning districts. The changes to the telecommunications facilities section are essentially wholesale, and we've included new definitions and changes to the additional regulations for specific uses outlined in 165-204-19 that is consistent with the state code. The two-track process creates an administrative review eligible projects. This includes small cell facilities, structures under 50 feet in height, or co-location on existing structures. Administrative review eligible projects would be permitted in all zoning districts, and they would be reviewed administratively by staff. It also enables a standard process projects. These are going to be your larger telecommunication monopoles and towers, which you all are familiar with. Those will be continued to be reviewed under the conditional use permit process and would require public hearings before the Planning Commission and the Board of Supervisors. This item was proposed by the county attorney and by staff, and the DRRC discussed this item at their September 25th regular meetings, and the DRRC was supportive of those proposed changes. This item again is presented to you all this evening for discussion, and staff is seeking any comments from the Planning Commission on this zoning ordinance text amendment to forward to the Board of Supervisors. And staff is happy to answer any questions, should you have any. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Klein. Any questions? Yep, Roger. Mr. Thomas.
The definition of small cell is then the towers under 50 feet. Is that the small cell facility?
Under the state code definition, there's co-location, towers under 50 feet, and small cell. Small cell is, from the state code, is a wireless facility that meets the following qualifications: that antennas are located inside an enclosure no more than 6 cubic feet in volume, or in the case of an antenna that is exposed, the antenna and all of its exposed elements could fit into an imaginary enclosure no more than 6 cubic feet, and all other wireless equipment associated with the facility has a cumulative volume of no more than 28 cubic feet.
Okay.
So small cell is referring to the size.
So it's not just the tower, it's also
Correct.
the equipment on the ground.
Yes, sir.
So
Correct.
a 50-foot tower and 6 cubic feet of equipment would be considered a small cell.
I believe small cell is different than a tower under 50 feet.
Okay, but, okay. The administrative approval of the adding to existing facilities, is there a limit on the tower height? If you have a building, can you add a 50-foot tower on top of a 50-foot facility or a 30-foot facility?
just trying to find the section of code that pertains to co-location. It says co-location of any existing structure of a wireless facility that is not a small cell facility. So it would be my understanding, and Mr. Williams can correct me if I'm wrong, that that would include existing towers and monopoles if there was new co-location.
Okay.
Under B1B, it says any structure not more than 50 feet above ground level. I think that includes putting it on top of a 50-foot building. It's measured from the ground.
Okay. So when we say a wireless facility on an existing structure to be cited, it could be, to be cited administratively, if you had a 3-story building, you could only put, say, another 20 feet of tower on top of it.
Yes.
So the total height from the ground to the top is 50 feet. Okay.
Yeah. So under existing structures, it includes any structure that is currently supporting, designed to support, or capable of supporting the attachment of a wireless facilities, including towers, buildings, utility poles, light poles, flag poles, signs, and water towers.
All right, is it good? Yeah. All right, anyone else? Thanks, sir. Since I have no one saying otherwise and then nods of heads, does this look good? We'll move us on to the Board of Supervisors.
I like that.
As it is, I know that it's desperately needed in our western and northern regions of our county, so this will also go to the Board of Supervisors with our okay for the October 9th meeting. That brings us down to other. Do we have a meeting scheduled for 2 weeks?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, we do, and we'll have a couple of public hearings on the ordinance amendments that were discussed most recently on rural area uses, conditional uses, if you will, and the public utilities solar.
All right, thanks, sir. And unless anyone else has something else to add, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn.
Second.
And we have a second. All those in favor? Aye. We're adjourned.